is 1897. From Seattle to San Francisco, word spreads of an incredible discovery up north. Gold, gold, and more gold. Lawyers became prospectors overnight, shopkeepers became survivalist experts, and tens of thousands of Americans abandoned their homes to chase fortune in those frozen wastelands, sometimes known by the northern natives as Canada. Among those who dared to risk it all for fame and fortune was one man, a man whose story has been largely forgotten by history. His name was Jordan Goldenbottom. Jordan Goldenbottom's tragic tale of adventure, risk, and fateful encounters survives only in eyewitness accounts and fables passed through generations. His journey remains one of the most cautionary examples of the Klondike Gold Rush. So much so, in fact, that his experience was sensationalized in 1994's The Yukon Trail, a spin-off of a vastly more popular video game with a similar title, focusing more on the American journey to Oregon. Some would argue that trek is as daunting and exhausting today as it was back then, mainly because your destination would most likely be Portland. Goldenbottom was born and raised in the bustling streets of Beaverton, Oregon. Goldenbottom dreamed not of a bustling family of 12 playing in the many lovely parks found scattered across Beaverton, nor becoming involved in the bustling community that takes care of their own, but of something far greater: money and gambling. As news of the gold rush reached the Pacific Northwest, he was among the first to sell off all of his possessions, mainly his Trailblazers jersey, pooling together just enough funds to set off for Seattle and conquer the Yukon Trail. When historians talk about the fated encounter between Goldenbottom and Midas T. Golden, they often compare it to that one scene in One Piece where Luffy finally makes it to Lowtown and almost gets his head chopped off by Buggy in the same place Gold Roger was executed. We still don't know why they keep making the comparison. If anything, Midas is Luffy and Jordan is Buggy, but when we ask the historians to explain, they refuse to listen. Some believe it's because the historians have found a secret connection us common folk cannot comprehend. But some believe they're just like super fans of the show, and they just want to find excuses to bring it up. Goldenbottom had plenty of options with who would be traveling with him on his journey. From expert carpenters, an actual native to the Yukon, to a news reporter for some reason. But ultimately, he settled on the person with the most money, the banker, Midas T. Golden, as again, we can't stress enough how addicted he was to gambling. This would later prove to be his most fatal mistake. One would argue his faith in the old banker would seem wise, as more money equals more options. One would also argue that mindset gets tossed out the window when he's hired by a crippling gambling addict with no sense of urgency and common sense. Where most stampeders invested in food and sleds, Goldenbottom preferred whipsaws. Like, a lot of whipsaws. He bought 4 whipsaws. That's a lot of money to be spending on whipsaws. You only really need like one. Honestly, he should have bought more food, because you can't eat whipsaws. Either way, his faith in gambling would surely fill the rest of the gap. Right? Goldenbottom, when presented with the choice of Skagway or Dyea, pondered his options for quite some time. Standing right in the middle of the road, kinda ignorant. Get out of the way. Skagway was a crime-riddled town full of crooks, thieves, and sketchy gambling. Dyea was much safer, and was the optimal choice for those seeking a grand adventure without too much risk. Knowing what he needed to do, Goldenbottom bought the ticket and was en route to Skagway. Arriving in Skagway, Goldenbottom immediately flocked to the Golden Nugget minigame that Midas warned him was rigged due to the AI limitations of the game. But of course, he did not listen. After spending most of their money, they had no choice but to travel the Chilkoot Pass and pray for good luck. Luck, however, does not favor the unprepared.
Some of our food has been stolen. There seems to be no respect for personal property. We should check our supplies to see how much food we still have.
While others rationed their food for the months ahead, Goldenbottom never calculated the amount of life force Midas required every day to function. He claimed it was due to his thick leg bones, but honestly, he was just a hungry hippo. Historians say he was a compulsive liar as well, claiming that the food kept getting stolen. In reality, Midas was gluttonous, greedy, and a liar. At Lake Bennett, thousands of men became shipbuilders overnight. With no prior experience, Goldenbottom proudly assembled his own vessel using one of his, and I can't state this strongly enough, 4 whipsaws. Eyewitnesses described him as a walking hazard. His decision to give the boat a square design was certainly a choice. When asked why he didn't design it like the other boats, he simply said,
"A wider surface makes more room for Midas."
It is believed he christened the vessel the Lady of Perpetual Whipsaws, which is fucking funny, but not when you realize he dropped all of them in the river and harmed multiple species of fish. Some say he directly contributed to the salmon famine of 1902, while others praised him for finding a word that rhymed with salmon. The river journey tested even the strongest. Rapids overturned countless boats, cargo was lost, especially whipsaws. For Goldenbottom, the danger was not the river, but boredom. Do you see how fucking boring this river is? Some say he spent the journey playing Animal Crossing New Horizons, but refused to let Midas visit his island. It's a dick move, Goldenbottom. In Dawson City, most discovered the bitter truth. The best claims were already gone. Goldenbottom, however, discovered a different truth. Dawson had casinos. His name quickly became familiar in saloons all across town, not as a miner, but as a regular who just never knew when to fold. His gambling reached a tipping point, however, when he eventually ended up gambling away Midas himself to a skagwag scallywag. Nobody saw Midas again after that fateful day. Historians believe he spent his later years working the pier in Seattle, though rumor has it he had a great-great-grandson who was seen buffing the basketball court for the Portland Trail Blazers. Little is known of Goldenbottom after his disastrous expedition. Some say he returned home in shame. Others claim he never left Dawson, forever haunting the back rooms of its saloons. One guy even said he watched him phase out into the literal back rooms, but everybody knew he was just addicted to beaver piss. But one truth remains. His story captures the essence of the gold rush, from the desperate chase for fortune to the cruelty of fate, and the thrill of the chase.